Welcome to the Summer 2022 Student Staff Welcome Event. My name is Rubina Boucher, pronouns she, her, and I will have the pleasure of leading today's session entitled Ask Us Anything. Please note that the session is offered in French, but that an English session on the same topic is presented simultaneously. I would like to acknowledge that I am joining you today from the traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy of First Nations and the Huron-Wendat peoples. Some of you today may be joining us from various parts of the country, and therefore I encourage you all to take a moment to recognize and acknowledge the territory you are occupying. As we move through today's session, please share your comments in the chat space and questions by using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. You can vote for questions you like by clicking on the thumbs up button. The questions with the most thumbs up will float to the top, and those will be the ones that we will ask our panel. So we are in very good company today, and we look forward to hearing your perspectives and advice. Joining us today, we have Priyanka Sharma, GC Student Co-Chair and Advisor at Employment and Social Development Canada, Jennifer Thorne, Public Service Renewal at the Privy Council Office, Alexandra Scott, Human Resources Advisor at the Public Service Commission, Samantha Prosper, Student for the National Indigenous Student Circle at Public Service Commission. Panelists, if you wouldn't mind now, please briefly introduce yourselves, and I'll go ahead and start with Priyanka.
Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be a part of today's panel. Like Rubina has said, my name is Priyanka Sharma. I am the co-chair of GC Students with Audrey-Anne, as well as an HR advisor at Employment Social Development Canada. My pronouns are she, her, elle. And today I am joining you from the National Capital Region, which is the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe peoples. Excuse me. I started in the federal public service as a student in 2018 and then was bridged into a full-time position in 2020 at the Department of National Defense and had the opportunity to work on the student employee onboarding file. I was then given an opportunity to move to ESDC, where I am also working on the student file here. I made my move in June 2021. I'm super excited and thrilled that I get to be a part of such a wonderful network. I get to work with all the students and advisors and share my experience and help make all of your experiences amazing. So thank you so much for having me here today.
Jennifer.
So I'd also like to thank you for the invitation. I'm Jennifer Thorne and my pronouns are she, her. I'm in Mont-Tremblant, Quebec, and would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which I join you today is the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin, Huron-Wendat, and Anishinaabe nations. The Algonquin peoples have lived on this land since time immemorial, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to be present in this territory. I'm originally from a small francophone town in New Brunswick called Edmundston, and I'm a proud Acadian. And if you want to be even more specific, I'm a Brayonne. I studied commerce with a specialization in human resources at the University of Ottawa. I'll start by saying I had no aspirations to join the federal public service, but through some luck, I got my first opportunity working for the public service through a co-op program. And I was also similar to Priyanka, bridged in permanently. I've worked in many different organizations and fields, which is part of the beauty of the public service, in my opinion. I did 2 tours in a department, again, of Priyanka's, which is now known as Employment and Social Development Canada. If you stay long enough in government, you will no doubt also find yourself spending time in a department or agency that eventually will change its name. I also worked twice at the Department of Canadian Heritage. I worked in the Minister's Office at the Solicitor General of Canada, spent a couple of years at something called the Millennium Bureau of Canada, and a student on our team graciously pointed out that this was the year after she was born, and so that didn't make me feel old at all. I also worked at the Canada School of Public Service and now work at the Privy Council office. And so during that time as well, also, managed to have 2 kids during that time. I've been really lucky, had the opportunity to work in different fields. So grants and contributions, project management, was a departmental liaison in a minister's office, chief of staff to 2 deputy ministers and 2 DGs, worked in comms, marketing, outreach, engagement, access to information and privacy, governance, policy, cabinet and parliamentary affairs, planning, audit and valuation, governor and council appointments, Senate appointments, events planning and management, and now in public service renewal. That's quite a shopping list. And all of that, though, out of all of that, I think I might be best known for something that happened with me in 2018 is a time where pre-pandemic, I took a demotion to be able to move from Ottawa to Mont-Tremblant to work virtually full-time. So I did not cause COVID, and it was just, an opportunity now, though, for others to have the opportunity to work virtually as well. And really happy to be here today because I had the privilege of being supported and mentored by some really passionate, dedicated, and supportive managers throughout that very long career. And events like today are my way to help others maneuver and hopefully be successful in the public service. Back over to you.
Alexandra, please go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you. You've had such an interesting career, Jennifer. That's amazing. So my name is Alexandra Scott. My pronouns are she, her. And I would like to acknowledge that I am in Ottawa, which is the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. I hold a degree in social sciences from the University of Ottawa, and I am from Ottawa, so I've always heard about the federal public service and was always interested in working for the federal public service eventually. And this led me to explore different career paths in the public service once I graduated. My first position was a casual contract as a clerk at the reception office for people coming in to do some testing at the Public Service Commission. And while I was in this position, I was lucky enough to land an indeterminate position as a clerk. And while I was in this position, I volunteered to help with organizing our department's picnic for the National Public Service Week, which is when I met a super amazing Director General. And she told me that she had an acting appointment or an acting opportunity coming up as her executive assistant, which I interviewed for the next week. And I then worked as her executive assistant for about 4 years. And during that time, also had 2 wonderful kids. And I was really lucky enough to land this job through networking and through actually volunteering for different committees and joining different committees. And during my 4 years as her executive assistant, I was able to see all the amazing work that was being done by the HR advisors in my sector, so in my group. And I informed my supervisor that I was really interested in pursuing this career path. They were super lovely and provided me with some mentorship opportunities to just do some job shadowing with the HR advisors to see if it's really something that I liked, and encouraged me to apply to job opportunities as HR advisors. And now I am currently an HR advisor in what's called a developmental program. So what's great about the developmental program is that I started as an entry-level HR advisor, so that's the PE1 level, and that should take me to the PE3 level through this program. So I just wanted to share with you a little bit about my personal career path to show you that one of the best things with working in the public service is the openness that supervisors have to see their employees succeed and to really help advance their careers. And as a student, you can really take your career into your own hands and grow through the different networking events that will be organized for you, and just through open discussions with your peers and your supervisors throughout your student contract. Thank you.
Thank you. Samantha.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Samantha Prosper, and my pronouns are she and her. I am Mi'kmaq First Nations from Nova Scotia, but I currently live in Canada, which is just southwest from Ottawa. And it's on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. I have an undergrad in social sciences with a focus in psychology and communications. And I'm currently completing my last semester of courses in a master's in counseling psychology. So I'll start my placement practicum in the fall. So I am a student working with the government. I've had 2 positions so far within the government. The first was with Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. which started in 2020, and I was there for about 8 months. And then my current position, which is with the Public Service Commission with the Indigenous Center of Expertise, which I started in 2021. So I've been here for almost a year and a half now, which is crazy. Like Jennifer from my original position, I couldn't really see myself working long-term in the government. The team and the work that I was doing wasn't really what I envisioned for my career, and was really skeptical about coming back for my current position. But when I interviewed with my manager, I could immediately tell that the environment was different. And so far, I've been introduced to so many opportunities and projects and people. So I really want to help in any way with other students to have that experience. Even if you did have a poor experience, you can have a really positive one and be able to turn your student term into a career in the public service if that's something that you want to do.
Thank you so much, Samantha. So now we're going to move on to the structured questions of our meeting today. That will be followed by our participant questions. So our first question is for Alexandra. As an HR advisor, can you explain the benefits of joining the federal public service as a student, please? Thank you.
Yes, definitely. So joining the public service as a student, you can gain some valuable work experience while you're studying, which can then add some value to your resume. And this will also help develop your employability skills. Another benefit is that it can give you an insight into what a career as a federal public servant looks like. A little bit like Samantha says, she's changed departments just because it wasn't really in line with what her original department career aspirations were. Another benefit is the student bridging option. So what student bridging means is when you get appointed into a position in the public service through what's called a non-advertised appointment. So you don't need to apply on GC jobs and go through the whole interviews and assessments. You would be appointed into a position permanently. And just a few quick facts on student bridging for you. So it is an option for students who are hired through FSWEP, through the Indigenous Student Employment Opportunity, through the Employment Opportunity for Students with Disabilities, through co-op, or through the Research Affiliate Program. And there's no specific time frame to be bridged into the public service after you graduate. So it could be immediately after you graduate, or it could be even a couple of years after you graduate. So if you wanted to take a few months off, even a year off to travel or explore different career paths, you can always reconnect with your network and seek out opportunities and potentially be offered a non-advertised appointment after you've had that job as a student. And another thing to note about student bridging is that it's not only applicable to your specific team. So you could be bridged into either another department, or you could be bridged into another team within your department after you graduate. And something else to note is that if you are working as a student right now, you can actually be rehired as an FSWEP student in future semesters. So if you wanted to change departments or change teams, maybe explore another career path, that's always an option for you. So you can do some networking, meet a manager potentially at another department, and be rehired directly by them without having to sort of reapply to FSWEP. And when you are a student, it's really your time to shine. So don't hesitate to lift up your hand and help with organizing any events this summer or leading any meetings if you feel comfortable doing that. You can ask to join committees that interest you within your organization. It's a really great way to meet people, to meet other students, and to have that conversation with your supervisor about your expectations from your student job. So what are you hoping to accomplish this summer? And where do you want to take your career? And I do encourage you to have those discussions as soon as possible.
I would just like to add that we have so many wonderful links that you can go to on our GC Students Wiki page. They're shared with you in the chat. You'll see information on tips and tricks for you as a student when you're working. There's also some resources for networking and some information on pay and benefits. So definitely visit those links whenever you have a chance.
Priyanka, I do have another question for you. How can students who are not working in their field of study find out about the work being done by other departments or teams?
For sure. My first advice to any student who's looking to work in a different field or in their own field of study is to definitely have a conversation with your supervisor or manager. I think it's a really important step to take to make sure that your supervisor or manager knows what your goals are and where you want to be in your career. They can definitely help you build connections with some people who might already be working in the field that you are interested in, or your field of, or working in a field of yours, what you're studying. So that would definitely be my go-to. Kind of make sure you have that initial conversation, make sure you're taking that time to make it very clear what your goals and objectives are when working in the federal public service, because there's so many opportunities that you can come across. The second thing that I want to really push is networking. So take time to build your LinkedIn profile, to connect with people on LinkedIn, to connect with people in your office, talk to people, try to see what they're doing, what they're working on, get involved in discussions with other students. You have opportunities like today where you get to network with other students who might be studying what you're studying and doing a job that you want to be doing. So grow your network by making sure that you're hands-on and making sure your LinkedIn profile is always up to date. You're always connecting with people, chatting with people. We do have resources. We have a GC directory. You can go into the GC directory. You can find people through there, depending on what organization they work for, department, agency. If you're interested in, for example, health sciences, you can always go to the Health Canada directory, see who works there, potentially send a cold email, which is an email that you could send to a professional asking questions about, you know, what types of jobs might be offered there, maybe connecting with someone you might have networked with through LinkedIn. So definitely networking is a really, really big part of being able to find, you know, your path in what you want for your career. So those are the tips I have.
Wonderful tips. Thank you. Samantha, you seem very involved in networking. What do you get out of your involvement, and how does it help you build your network of contacts?
I think this list could be endless, honestly, just from like gaining information and meeting new people and seeing what you're interested in and really just exploring, especially as a student. But I think I've gained a lot of knowledge in how to both make and maintain professional relationships. I've also been invited to work on a lot of projects that I wouldn't normally consider within my job description. So in that respect, new opportunities to learn new skills. I also regularly use these relationships that I've built to help me with my projects. So for example, being able to email a colleague in communications to help with presentation and wording, or reaching out to people who have experience in the subject for their opinion, or asking what other departments are doing. I think in using those relationships, I've been able to learn a lot more and take a lot more skills away from my job and work them into my projects that I'm doing. I think this also goes in how I help to build my network. I use the people for my own projects, but I also hope that in doing so that they see me as a potential contact if they have a project and they know that it's something that I've been involved in or that I'm interested in. So hopefully, if they're working on a project and they know that I've done it before, my name will come to their head, or if their colleague has a project or something that would interest me, they would mention me to them. So it's really a two-way street of maintaining the relationships, but also using those relationships to build more relationships. And in turn, maybe even getting a job offer if someone's like, you know what, I've worked with her on a project, or she's really interested in this. She would be a great fit for the job, and getting opportunities that way.
Priyanka, how about you?
Well, just on the networking front and the resources, I keep talking about resources and making sure that you are always connecting with, you know, people. So the GC Students Wiki page has a networks and networking page where you can go and see the importance of networking, what networking means. So all of what we've been talking about is kind of on this page, so you can refer back to that to make sure that, you know, you kind of have a good guide to networking. So just, yeah, go visit the page. It's in our chat.
Great, thank you. And Jennifer, so we've been talking a lot about networking, writing to managers. What catches your eye in a resume or in an email from someone looking for a job?
Well, if I'm honest, the first thing that catches my eye is spelling mistakes. So it's a big pet peeve of mine. So if you are looking for a job, be really diligent and careful in terms of that attention that you're bringing to that. But jokes aside, you know, my entire career path has actually been achieved through my network. So all of those jobs I described earlier were always done because of someone that I'd worked with, or someone that I worked with put me into contact with someone else. I never kind of applied for a job and then, you know, got that job through the kind of that process, if you will. So really, once I got my foot in, I maneuvered through the system. If you heard the clerk of the Privy Council this morning talking, she talked about, you know, the straight 4-lane highway kind of career path versus the meandering path. I was definitely more of the meandering path type of person, and really discovered all of the opportunities through the networks and connections that I made along the way. And so for me, it's really about cultivating relationships and building your reputation. If you perform well, then your colleagues and manager will be your best spokespeople. And when someone I know takes the time to refer and recommend someone, that really speaks volumes. I find that the cold call, at least for me, kind of CVs that just kind of magically end up in my inbox sometimes fall flat. Not to say that I haven't pursued some of them sometimes, but to me, if you're doing that, you need to be really deliberate about who you're targeting and have an understanding of that organization. That kind of shotgun approach where you email a ton of people and just kind of, you know, hope that someone will give you a call back. At least I don't particularly appreciate those. I like the ones that are really more where people put more effort and more targeted. And I've also have to say that I've been really impressed by some of the more creative CVs that I've seen in recent days. People with some of those, you know, infographics and kind of very digital CVs. I'm still very old school, and I keep thinking I need to come up and modernize myself. And I'll share just that, you know, in the government or in the federal public service, a lot of the staffing processes are really currently built around the experience and specific skills that you've acquired. And I think that, you know, there's a lot of openness about acquiring those skills either through professional government experience, but also through other experiences. And so I think it's really important for you to take note and to document those things as you're going through, and do that as you're doing the jobs, as you're finishing them. It's a good reflection on everything that you've done, but also in terms of documenting that for your CV, and tracking the time that you've been in each job, because some, you know, posters, as we call them, will actually ask you, how many months did you do this, and ask you for that specific detail and experience. So keep a kind of master tracker. And then the other thing that I would say is that once you do start managing, also really note the budgets that you're responsible for, as well as the number of staff that you're overseeing, because that might also be things that they're specifically asking you for. And that's something that no one had told me earlier in my career. And so when I started having to apply for processes and do some of that work, it was a lot of recreating history and having to remember and go through some really old notes to try to be able to document that. So that would be a tip. I'd say kind of track as you go along, so you don't lose that note.
Great tips. Thank you. Alexandra, what catches your attention?
Yeah, I completely agree with Jennifer's comments, I would say that one of the best things that you can do if you are sending emails is to just really be yourself and to sort of speak about your interests. And instead of making one generic email that you're going to blast to a whole bunch of people, try and be a little bit more personal in your emails and tell them why you want to work for them, what interests you in their team, or why do you want to work for that specific organization is something that can be attractive to a manager. And something else that you can include is volunteer experience. If you are a student and you don't have that much work experience, but you do have some volunteer experience, that can be also attractive to a manager. And don't be too disheartened if you don't hear back from a manager right away. Like Jennifer said, sometimes they might not have a job for you immediately, but they'll hang on to your CV for the future. Or all managers also have a network. So maybe they'll say, well, this isn't really a right fit for my team, but I know somebody else on my old department or one of my old colleagues, this would be perfect for them. So they'll send the CV along. And sometimes it could take a few weeks before you might get an answer, but don't be discouraged from sending these emails, because I've heard of a lot of people who have landed some jobs by sending some emails and their CVs to managers.
Wonderful. And to follow up with that, what advice would you give or would you have for graduating students? Where do they start?
Yes, for sure. So I think the first thing I would suggest to all students today that are graduating soon, or if you're thinking about still being employed as a student before you graduate, is to have a discussion with your supervisor as soon as possible with regards to student bridging options. So just ask the question, will there be space on their team once you graduate? And is that even a possibility for you? This way you can plan for the future, and it will also show your supervisor that you are interested in working for the federal public service, you're interested in the career and committed. And if they don't have any space, unfortunately, or they're not sure what the plans will be for when you are graduating, you can ask them if it would be possible for them to share your CV with their network for any other potential jobs. As I mentioned in the previous question, managers are always staying in touch with their colleagues, and they might be able to be the best person to share your CV with their network. And it speaks volumes whenever you have a manager that is vouching for you, that is saying, this student worked for me, they're amazing, you want to hire them. So it's really important that you're giving your everything that you can during your student contract, and that you are having this open discussion with your supervisor throughout your whole contract about what your expectations are. And another avenue that I would suggest that you start looking at is the GC Jobs website. So it's the main platform for the Government of Canada where most of the job opportunities for the federal public service will be posted. And one of the really cool features that there exists in GC Jobs is what we call job alerts. So you can set up your profile, and in your profile, you can actually sign up for alerts. So you'll put in criteria like the city you're interested in. You can put in some departments that you're interested in working for. And every time there's going to be a job that will be posted on GC Jobs, you'll automatically receive an email, because jobs on GC Jobs could be posted for 24 hours, for a week, or they could be posted for 6 months. So that way, if you don't want to miss anything, I strongly suggest you set up those job alerts. And in line with job alerts and GC Jobs, the Public Service Commission also has a program called the Post-Secondary Recruitment Program. And that's where you can launch or advance your career by applying to the federal public service opportunities. And it's a program specifically for college and university graduates. And we will launch different inventories in a broad range of fields. And what's really great about the post-secondary recruitment is that different departments can go into this inventory and request candidates. So you're not necessarily applying to one specific job, but for sort of like a kind of like a type of job that different managers can then request their CVs for. And if you set up your job alerts for the Public Service Commission, you will get a notification whenever the post-secondary recruitment campaign comes out. And lastly, if you're not really sure kind of where to go or which occupational group that you might be interested in. So an occupational group is those two letters associated with the numbers, and each job type in the government typically has what we call an occupational group, and that kind of regroups everybody. So I'm in HR, and I think Priyanka is in HR as well. So we're what's called PE. And then if you're not really sure which occupational group is right for you, and if you're working as a student right now and you see a colleague that's doing a job and you're like, this is exactly what I want to be doing, I love it, just ask them what their occupational group is, and I'm sure they'll be super flattered that you've asked, and they'll provide you more information about what types of jobs there are within that occupational group. They might even sort of share their career paths, what they've studied, which can then help you kind of plan for the future. So those would be my few tips.
Great. Jennifer, what advice can you offer the student here?
Well, it's funny because Alexandra was talking about the occupational groups. When I interact with friends that are not in the public service, and I'm talking to public service friends and we start talking about jobs, they say it's like you're talking a completely different language with all these codes that they don't understand. And even my kids now, they'll be like, it's us, AS7 at TBS, and like they, just blurt out all of these random codes. So, but they are important. They all really do mean something. And one thing I would just share too is that yes, they're important, but you shouldn't, put all of the value just in the occupational codes. Some people are really, really, I'd say, judgmental about codes, and I am not. I have again meandered through many different groups and categories, and I think that you can do really interesting and worthwhile things in lots of different groups and categories. So that's my perspective. And I think, again, there's just so many opportunities in the government. So as a student, I'd say that's kind of your foot in the door. So kind of step one. And where I'd say if you do have the opportunity to get a job, of course, I won't say it's not good to get indeterminate, but I don't think that that's the only path. There's lots of different ways to come in to get some of that experience and to, not just get your foot in the door, open up that door and kind of come into it fully. I think I'm hearing actually way more people that are coming in and looking for more of these gig type jobs, that they come and do something that they're interested as for as time and a season, not for a career. And I think that that's a very valuable way to gain experience as well, and can give you fulfillment rather than locking you in with those kind of handcuffs into that career path. I would say though, if you do end up pursuing a career and you become an employee, and there was a question about this in the Q&A, I'd buy back your student time as soon as you join. Again, no one had told me this. I learned this much later on in my career when I had moved up in those groups and those numbers. And so it cost me way more because you will buy it back at whatever level you are when you buy it back, rather than at your entry level job. And I'd say that for the most part, you probably enter at the lowest level and you will move up after that. So again, that would be a real tip that I would give to you. We've been talking about all the various platforms and ways to get information. I would say sign up for GC Exchange and some of the other GC tools. Sign up for groups because it's crazy all the information that can automatically just be sent to you based on the filters and the profiles and the groups that you join, and also really encourage taking part in those horizontal and functional communities. And what we mean by horizontal communities would be things that go across the public service. It can be an employment equity group. So if you're a person with disability, there might be a persons with disability group in your organization. There might also be the youth network or the student network. And then often there are some of those groups that are in your own organization or institution, but also some that span different organizations. So you get to kind of interact with those that are outside of those silos that maybe where you work or your department. And the functional ones are the ones, again, coming back to the occupational groups, working in HR, working in finance, working in information management. There are also groups that come together in those more vertical kind of natures. And then the job alerts on jobs.gc, I would encourage you to sign up for those as soon as possible, not only to watch for jobs for yourself, but also just in terms of nurturing your relationship. I watch it just to see where people are moving to say, hey, someone I know has just moved to this other organization. Maybe I'll hit them up to say, you know, I'd like to come and work there. Can you keep an eye open for me? And even just congratulating people on new jobs. I think that goes a long way in terms of just kind of building and maintaining good relationships. So those would be my additional tips. But I agree to everything with Alexandra said as well.
Now, Jennifer, also, what are your favorite skills and qualities that a student should demonstrate to their team?
So I'd say just an interest in the work and an interest in learning. You know, I had lots of different jobs when I was a student that weren't necessarily attached to my field of study. And I, you know, even though I've done lots of different jobs and I've worked in the public service for longer than many of those that are probably listening have been even alive, I realize almost every day that there's so much that I still don't know about the public service. And not just that I don't know, there's things that I don't know that I don't know. So I think that that's really important, to come in and not to think that you know everything. Even if you've studied public administration or public policy, there will always be things that you'll learn. There's so many rules and things in government, so we won't hide, you know, from that. It is part of the reality. But it was interesting. I was reflecting on this question and kind of my perspective on this, and something came through one of my feeds this week, and it was on Twitter, and it was this bar graph that kind of, it is called, you know, it's like knowledge and expertise, and it kind of describes, and it says how much I think I know, and it's like this bar that goes up and then drops down sharply, and then, you know, how much I actually know, and it kind of goes slowly up on the bottom, and then how much more I realize I need to know, that one goes up sharply. And I feel that has really been my kind of appreciation for the public service and everything that you know we do need to come and kind of be aware of. And I think that although, you know, I'm saying that you don't know everything, do come in and bring interest to finding ways that we can do better, because for sure there's lots of different ways that we can work, and improvement and renewal are essential. And that's something that I actually work in my day job these days. We call public service renewal, because, you know, we can't be stagnant. We have to continuously modernize and stay on top of things and find faster and quicker and better ways of doing things. And on that point, I think, you know, as public servants, you know, some wise superiors of mine, you know, and I think even the clerk says this pretty regularly, think like a taxpayer. So when you're coming in, keep that in mind, that ultimately, you know, yes, you're an employee, but you're also a taxpayer. So, you know, are you doing this as effectively and as efficiently as you can? This was mentioned earlier, but try to find ways to help out. You know, not every experience or manager is going to be the same, but most jobs, I do think, at least mine, have had scope to allow you to contribute in different ways that weren't maybe articulated in that job description that you got. Also, I really encourage younger employees to be reverse mentors. You know, people like me, we can be very stagnant, and we've been around and we've seen everything 2 or 3 or 4 times, and so sometimes might be a little bit averse to different ways. But I think it's a really good realization that we can learn. We need new energy. We need new kind of breaths of fresh air. So bring that. And things like team spirit and building those social connections are really important. And getting to know your coworkers, and they'll be more willing and interested if you take a personal interest in them. To bring you along in the work, and to give you perhaps some different types of projects and experience. And then I just say, kind of, you know, always stay professional, but do have fun. I'm the person on the team that always makes the bad joke, and, you know, I like the gifts or whatever, gifs. I don't know what the pronunciation is, but in the team's meetings, and, you know, there's ways to keep things light and to make work enjoyable as well. So.
Great, thank you. And just being mindful of time here, Samantha, would you be able to let us know what skills and qualities you have developed as through your work at GOC? But just really briefly, if you don't mind right now, because we have some really excited attendees looking to get their questions answered. So go ahead, Samantha.
Yeah, I was going to say I'll make this as short as possible because I do see some questions coming in. Obviously, networking, as I mentioned before, how to maintain professional relationships, how to work within a team, and support your team members. And a lot of specific skills, like Government of Canada specific skills, like project management and what goes into that. So building communications plans or project charters and writing briefing notes that are always transferable throughout different positions, really focused on those. I also think most importantly, I've learned to trust myself and what I bring to a team. I think as a student, it's really easy to feel overlooked and like your work isn't valuable because you are sometimes only there for 4 months. So especially in my current position, I think I've really tried to put myself out there and be involved in as much as I can. And I found that it has given me a lot of confidence in my ability to add value to a project and a team. And it's really boosted my confidence in reaching out to people for jobs after this and applying to positions and being able to kind of boast about what I've been able to accomplish.
Those are some great skills. Thank you, Samantha. Priyanka, can you let us know what activities are coming up for the students this summer?
For sure. There's a few really fun activities coming up this summer. We have a student speed mentoring event that's taking place June 15th and 16th. We will share the link with you so you can consult the wiki page there and register for that event. There's also the closing event for students, which registration is now open as well. So you can go and visit the wiki page that was just linked here. It's on August 18th. Register for the event. It'll be such a great opportunity to network. It's always a good opportunity to network. So sign up for these events. If you do want to follow the Federal Youth Network on social media, as well as GC students on social media, you'll see a lot of the events that happen throughout the summer. We also have departmental showcases happening throughout the summer. So please visit, the wiki page for the Federal Youth Network. They have all the information there about the departmental showcases. So all the links are shared in the chat, and I guess we should move to the questions that are being asked in the Q&A session.
Yes, thank you. That sounds like some great activities planned. So to start off, I will be taking the questions in order based on your votes. The first question is in regards to sick days. This is coming from a Parks Canada student, I believe, and they're wondering why students are not entitled to sick days. With COVID, being sick could mean days without pay. So is there any advice or any type of options that anyone on the panel here has to give the students?
I can start. So like everything in the government of Canada, there's always legislations involved. And the reason that students don't get sick days is because that's currently what's indicated in the legislation. So the terms and conditions for students being employed. So what I would suggest that you do is have a discussion with your supervisor. If you do need to miss a couple of hours of work, perhaps you can make it up a different time. So just ask your supervisor, is there any flexibility and what they can offer for you? And they can maybe speak to the compensation team in your department or the labor relations team in your department. And perhaps this will make some changes to the terms and conditions. Now with the pandemic, we do realize things are different. So that would be my suggestion to you, is to speak to your supervisor about it.
Great suggestion. And that speaks with what everyone's pretty much said here, keeping that communication and that dialogue open with your supervisors. All right, next question. What is the likelihood that I would be able to stay at my job as a part-time worker through the school year? How would I go about asking my supervisor if I would be able to do this? Jennifer, your thoughts on this?
I can start. I can say I did that in my career. So I came in as a co-op student and then stayed on with the same team. So I explored the opportunity and simply asked my manager in that position. And so again, once you've got that foot in the door, and I'll let Alexandra maybe speak on them on all of the programs and everything else, but there is an opportunity to go in and have specific students that already are in the system kind of pulled in and brought into the team. There's other opportunities, perhaps, being hired not as a student. There's something that's called a casual, which is a temporary employment contract as well that might be available depending on the organization that you're in. So there are ways. So I continuously did the co-op, then part-time, then back to co-op, then back to part-time. I worked kind of continuously until I graduated and then was bridged in full-time.
Great, thanks. So our next question is in regards to LinkedIn. What kind of content should we post on LinkedIn? This person is saying that they know that they need to be active, but they just don't know what to post. What does everyone suggest?
I can go ahead and give some suggestions on what you might want to post on LinkedIn. Me being new to the public service, I know what position you're in, and it could feel very overwhelming when you're a student and you haven't had too many job opportunities. But you can always take experiences you've had in school and projects that you've worked on in school and use those as your experiences to add onto your LinkedIn profile. I think those can come in very handy if you want to share the teamwork that you had, the organization skills that you developed during a project, the types of research you've done. You can also the biggest thing for me is always posting what your experiences have been, where you've gained certain skills. Specifically for students, again, I want to say like the projects that you work on in university can be very good to add on your LinkedIn profile, which is basically like your resume. So just take those and add those skills on there, use those as opportunities to showcase your talents, your skills. And definitely make sure you also add in your education levels. That's another important piece to add onto your LinkedIn profile. That's just one tip from me.
Any other tips from the panelists? Yes, Jennifer?
I don't want to take all the time, but I'll say for LinkedIn, I use it more as a networking tool, and I will say I'm more of a lurker than an active contributor. So again, I follow groups there that I have an interest in. I'm connected to people that I have, crossed paths with, or that know someone that I know. And it's just a way to nurture some of those relationships. And I do get some of the contacts rather than the cold calls via email, via LinkedIn. And so I use it more as a networking tool to stay connected and to learn. People, share articles and other things that might be relevant to my field of work. And so I watch it from that perspective.
Great. Alexandra, I think the next two questions, they go hand in hand and they might be for you. So one of the attendees would like to know about the bridging program. Actually, a lot of them would like to know about bridging from a full-time summer co-op position to a part-time position in the fall in a different department. And then another attendee is asking, how exactly do we bridge? Is there specific resources we should be looking for? Should I be looking for it in job postings?
Perfect. Yeah. So when we say student bridging, it's kind of a non-official term that has been adapted by public servants. What student bridging is when you're appointed into a position in a non-advertised way. So what that means is that you're not actually applying to a job on GC Jobs, that main portal, but rather you'd be given an permanent position once you graduate by a department, by a manager. So that's kind of what student bridging is. So you can't actually apply on GC Jobs. There's no poster for student bridging. It's just a term that we have adopted. So what I would suggest that you do, and that is something that is doable once you've worked as a student. So that's like one of the best benefits of working as a student, is that it's really easy for a manager to sort of say, we want to help renew the public service. We've invested in you as a student and we want to see you grow your career in the public service. So we will bridge you in. So that just kind of means they're giving you a permanent position. As for continuing your contract after co-op part-time, I believe you're referring to if you're continuing your studies next year and you want to keep working part-time, that would be considered a student rehire. So what's really great is that if you have worked one term as a student, so FSWEP, co-op, or research affiliate program, you can be rehired in any future terms up until you graduate by either your team or somebody else. So when you are studying an academic term, you're eligible to work part-time and also go to school. And for part-time hours, what we suggest is that you have a discussion with the hiring manager to see what fits with your schedule. So it's between you and your manager, you'll just chat and see how many hours you want to do based on your school schedule. So I hope that answers the question.
Great. And the next question is in regards to student health and work insurance or benefits. They're wondering if students have the same benefits as full-time employees and where they can find information about their benefits and insurance. And I'll open this up to the floor, or Alexandra, if you want to take it.
Yeah, I'm not a compensation advisor, so I'm not extremely familiar with benefits, but what I would suggest is that you ask your supervisor, because it will be dependent on the collective agreement that's associated with your position. So without getting too technical during this Ask Me Anything, I strongly suggest that you ask your supervisor the question. They're the best people to help you. Please never hesitate to ask your supervisor any questions related to work. It's never something that will be viewed negatively. It just means that you care about your job. So that's what I would suggest.
And Samantha, I think I'm going to ask you your take on this. So the next question is, what advice would you give to people in advanced degrees like master's degrees or PhDs? At what point do you become overqualified for a beginner level job in the public service?
That's a good question. And honestly, specifically to what I have been studying, none of my student positions have been necessarily relevant to that. So I feel like the skills and the content that I'm learning within the job that I'm in is so different from what I'm learning in school that I've never actually associated it as being like too advanced for my education level, I guess. I would just say take it in stride. There's always something you can learn. There's always people you can learn from. There's always projects you can ask to be on, regardless of what your education level is. So I would honestly say make the most of it and find an opportunity that you feel fits with your education and the skills that you were able to learn in that position moving forward.
Great. And Jennifer, do you want to add anything to that? Your thoughts, what you've seen in your career?
I'd say, like, again, I think being a student now provides opportunities, and as we were discussing some of the bridging, there might be opportunities to bridge at some of those different occupational groups and levels, depending on the competencies and kind of the skill and the knowledge that you're bringing. At least in all of the fields that I have worked, having a PhD was not necessary in those fields. So it wasn't like it was going to give you a foot ahead or kind of a jump in front of other colleagues. Not to say that that wouldn't be relevant in specific fields and jobs within the federal public service. So I'd say, you know, if you can get in, again, easier to move once you've made it through the door, than trying to come in at a more senior level from external processes, because external processes are, I'd say, are far further and fewer in between. And so, so my advice, at least in what I've seen, is to easier to come in and then move up than to try to kind of come in at and bridge in at a higher level.
Thanks. And Samantha, do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that while you're in your current position or your student position, look at the jobs that you want to be in, that you feel match your qualifications or where you want to end up. See what skills you need and what experience you need, and use the time that you have to work towards those so that when you are eligible or you are able to apply for that job, you have everything that you need to be able to move up.
All right. I think so. We probably have time for one or two more. So this is an interesting question here. Is there a story of a setback in your career that you would like to share? And could you describe what was your thought process in overcoming that? And I'll just open it up to whoever wants to answer from the panels.
I can go ahead and talk about a bit of a setback that I had in my career. It had to do with me not knowing what I wanted to do with my career. I had no idea what I wanted. I was studying psychology at Carleton at the time, and I came across a few opportunities within the public service. So I had the opportunity to work with shared services, which was a very technical team that I worked with. And I was feeling really down because the job that I had at the time was really not what I liked or enjoyed. And I was stuck kind of thinking that I may not ever find a job that I would enjoy. But what kind of helped me get out of that was my skills to network. So I kind of went around, looked for other opportunities that I might potentially have with my degree, with my background, with my skills. And I got the opportunity to talk to a few hiring managers and landed a position in the HR world. That's when I kind of learned that I love HR, I love what I'm doing, and that's really where I realized the importance to network and to get myself out there and really show my skills and my talent to people who might be able to help me figure out what I want, because maybe they've had years and years of experience in their job and they can, shed some light on what I was going through. So if there's any advice I could give to any student out there, is that don't hesitate to ask questions, to learn about what opportunities are out there. If you feel stuck, just go and read what each department does or what opportunities there might be. You never know what you'll find and what you'll land on and what types of jobs there are. So that was just a little hurdle I had. And I'm at the beginning of my career, at the start of my career. So I know that, I'm building this network where I'm going to come across bumps and humps that I have to cross in the next 30 years. And I know that if I have this network behind me, I'll be able to talk to my superiors and my mentors and ask them questions and get guidance on how I'm supposed to cross those bumps in the road. So that's my story.
Fantastic. And that's actually going to conclude this section of our discussion today. So thank you to all the participants for your engagement and thoughtful questions. It was a pleasure to read. We are now going to ask the panelists here if you have about 30 seconds. So what would you like students to keep in mind throughout their contract here? And I'm going to start actually with Priyanka, please.
I would highly recommend that you keep open communication with your supervisor or manager about what you want, get guidance from them, create a work plan with them, figure out some goals you can reach while you're in your work term. I think it's super important to keep that communication open with your managers and supervisors.
Jennifer?
So I'd say connect to your colleagues, connect to people outside of your colleagues and team. Be yourself, work hard, have fun, and try to make a difference.
And Alexandra?
Yeah, to echo what everybody said, I think throughout the whole session, just don't hesitate to talk to your supervisor, your manager about your career intentions and what your aspirations are during your student employment. What do you want to gain from your student contract? And finally, if you are interested in joining the federal public service after you graduate, just tell your supervisor and have that discussion as soon as possible.
Samantha?
And have fun.
Oh. And have fun. That's a good one. Yes. Samantha?
I don't want to repeat anything that's already been said. So everything that's been said, plus I would say really put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to join projects or network with people that you wouldn't necessarily do. For example, doing a student event when you're absolutely terrified of public speaking, it is a great way to get your name out there and to increase your network and start networking. As well as, like I said before, researching positions that you're interested in and really using this time to build the skills that will get you to that once you graduate or whenever you want to apply.
Great. And Samantha, you did fantastic. So it's been truly a pleasure. That concludes our event for today. I would like to thank our panelists, Priyanka, Jennifer, Alexandra, and Samantha, and all of you across our country for participating in this event. Let's meet right away on the WonderMe platform to network and chat. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
And yes, special thank you to our ASL interpreters as well. Thank you so much.